Okay. Yeah, so I'd love to talk about use this time to talk about our CodeMap tool, which I'll get into more about kind of how it came about, as well as some of the other data resources that are available as far as how people can access DHCD's data and kind of what we've been working on to improve that process as well. So like I just said, here's the agenda for today. I'd like to talk about CodeMap, our commitment to data transparency, trying to make as many data sets available as possible. And then, like Kevin said, I'll be answering questions. So yeah, feel free to drop questions in the chat, or I will stop a couple times during the presentation to see if there's any questions. So CodeMap is a tool that kind of has developed over the past decade or so. It started as more of a code enforcement tool. So there are only a handful of data sets related to code enforcement. So notices and citations, things like that were on there. But as the agency grew, and there's more divisions now with permits and development and all types of other things. There's people were requesting layers to be added to CodeMap, and it really just kind of grew. And as it grew, the GIS, the mapping technology kind of advanced as well. And so that allowed us to, continue to build the tool and kind of like make it work for as many people as possible. And so this graph that you can see is actually from when we unveiled this latest version of CodeMap almost 2 years ago now. We did a lot of CodeMap trainings. We did internal training. We did trainings for the public. We did it for city staff. And so this was a survey that we had registrants fill out. And so as you can see, a large bulk of the people who attended these trainings use CodeMap every day, or at least once a week. So it's a heavily used tool, especially within the agency. And then also, it's accessible by the public. And so we try to just like have as many data sets on there as possible. And with that, I will just jump to CodeMap. And let's see, share. Okay, so this is the link, or this is the page that you'll see when you open CodeMap. First, there's this kind of splash page. It says, "Welcome to CodeMap." Like I said, CodeMap used to be short for Code Enforcement Map. It's now kind of, we capitalize the D, and so now it's like Community Development Map to kind of encompass some more of the agency's activities. We have a link to a user guide as well as a previous recorded training, but things are always changing. So I'm glad you're here with us to see the latest and greatest. So once you come here, you can click OK, and you see this kind of high level map with a bunch of wild shapes and colors. And some of you are probably familiar with this already, but you can see this starting view just has some DHCD focus areas. And so those are related to kind of different strategies and initiatives. You may be familiar with the impact investment areas. You can see major redevelopment areas like the PSO development and EBDI, things like that. And then also a couple of other layers. And I just kind of want to get you oriented to some of the other things that you'll see initially. So you have the legend on the left, explaining what everything is and looks like. We have the layer list over here on the right, and there's a couple of capabilities of the layer list. So one, you'll see some layers, some groups are in black, the text is black. Those are, you can see those at this map extent. So we're zoomed so far out, we don't have every layer turned on because it would just be way too hectic. And so these groups that are grayed out, as you zoom in, the text will turn black and you'll be able to interact with those layers. You can also have a checklist. So if you're not interested in some layers, you can turn them on or off and customize it that way. And then there's also, you can change the transparency and get more information about the layer here. One last feature of the layer list is there's a search bar. So if you're looking for something specific, like for example, neighborhoods, you can type it in and you'll get a bunch of different layers, and you'll see the layer that you're interested in, and you can turn that on. So you get like the neighborhood layer, for example. I'm going to turn that off for now just to keep things simple. And then in the top left corner, we have the search bar. There's a couple of ways that you can search. You can type in an address, or sometimes or oftentimes within the agency, we use block lot as a property identifier. So if you know the block lot or the address, you should be fine no matter how you type it in. And you click the search bar and it will take you to that property. I'll demonstrate that in a moment. And then at the bottom, we have 5 little buttons that are some tools that you can use to interact with the data. And I'll go through those at the end of the presentation. One other way that we use CoDeMap is as a kind of a hub to access other data sets and other tools that DHCD has produced. And so right now I'm going to click on this little hyperlink button on the search bar, and that's going to open a new window. Or you get some options here first. One thing I want to highlight is our key DHCD tools. And so those are some of the new applications that I mentioned. Are you able to see the analytics gallery?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. So first you have, this is you can get to this gallery from DHCD's website as well. So you have the CoDeMap link. We have a development map, which was built to help connect anyone who's interested in purchasing city property from our open bid list. This is actually kind of becoming obsolete as we just transitioned into the new Buy Into Be More site. So this is the new resource for buying city-owned property, whether it's an adopt-a-lot or city disposition. We have a couple of other tools. I'm not going to go through them all specifically, but I did want to highlight the Key Stats dashboard, which is a really great way to get some high-level agency data very quickly. So right now, DBNs is commonly used data point, and so right here you have the official count, and you can filter that by year, by owner, so whether it's publicly or privately owned, and so you can kind of mess around with the filters. You can put on multiple filters. You can filter by neighborhood, and you'll just get a sense of kind of what's going on as far as vacant buildings, and then some of the other kind of strategies. So, the 2 ways that you can get rid of a vacant building notice is either to rehab it by getting a use and occupancy permit, or to demolish it. And so those are the 2 kind of strategies that we keep an eye on for remediating vacant buildings. There's also a second page of this hide floating controls. Okay, sorry. And there's a second page, which you can kind of explore the data in a little bit different way. But before we get too far afield, I'm going to go back to CoDeMap. And let's drill down a little bit to the property level. So there's an address that I can't remember the origins of how we ended up using this address, but it's a good sample property. So you type in the property, you get an option here, and you can click on it, and we'll zoom you in and highlight the property in blue. And so as you can see in the layer list, all of the groups that were grayed out are now black, and a lot more items are showing up in the legend. And so once you get used to kind of all of the different layers, and you can customize them, as I said, you really start to get a really good sense of what's going on kind of like the block or even the neighborhood level. So here you can see properties with this kind of mint green are city-owned buildings. Purple are owner occupied buildings. Red squares represent vacant building notices. And the yellow crosses represent vacant lots. And so there's a lot going on when you first open it, but once you kind of get a sense of how to read CoDeMap, you can really see, here's like a really strong ownership block adjacent to a bunch of vacant buildings, or these buildings were recently torn down, indicated by the brown outline. So you can really kind of get a sense of like the different dynamics going on in the property. One more layer to note is the gray stripes on a property indicate that there are currently permits open on that property. So you can assume that if it's a vacant building like this one, that it is currently being rehabbed. So that's like another kind of way to get a sense of what's going on at the property level. And
Hey,
then
Henry, excuse me. I'm sorry, because I know I came in late, but did you show that whole legend on the left-hand side that explains what you're talking about? And
yes, so I didn't go
open that
through
window up
the
while you're,
yeah, I didn't go through all of the shapes specifically, but yeah, trying to give just kind of a quick glimpse of some of the important ones or high level ones. So the legend, you can also expand the legend to capture more of them at the same time. And then if you need even more property information, you can actually click on a property and it will give you, as I said, the block lot, which is the property identifier, the neighborhood, the owner, the most recent sale date and price, as well as the zoning. Also, if there's a vacant building notice, you can see when that notice was issued. There are also a bunch of links on the property pop-up, as we call it. And that's notices. So you can click on that and it will take you to the actual notice. And you can actually see the physical PDF of the notice. There's citations. You can see if there's been any recent citations on the property. If there is an active permit indicated by these gray stripes, you can see permits on that property. There are a bunch of other, you can see if it's a rental property, rental licensing, if it's licensed, yes or no, the actual property record from the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, any legal information, the block plat. I will add the caveat that the block plat is not necessarily the most latest up to date, but it will give you at least an image of the block plat. One other cool tool that we've put together is the data profile. And so you see we're in Oliver, and if you are interested in having more information about the neighborhood, you can click data profile and we'll open up a 4-page PDF with kind of demographic and other data about the neighborhood. And this was built by a model. This data is collected by a model that basically aggregates census data, and since census boundaries like block groups and blocks and tracts do not match up with Baltimore neighborhoods, the model basically kind of takes like, okay, so 30% of this tract is in Oliver, 40% is in this, and then basically joins up the data to give you an estimate of at least for the census data. We also have there's income and some other kind of economic data. And then on the last page, there is additional housing data to get a sense of what's going on as far as permit activity, city-owned properties, things like that. And so this was updated last year. I'm not sure if we're going to be doing the update again this year, but the information is pretty good. And it's really interesting because I don't think anyone else has really kind of trimmed the census data this way for the neighborhood level. One more, we also have Street View and Google Earth. And then right before, I'm going to pause for questions in a moment, but I just wanted to show a new tool called Resident Info, which is similar to CoDeMap, but it's kind of more of a resource if you're interested in when is your trash pickup day? Am I in a CHAP district? Things like that. And so this will give you a quick summary. On the left-hand side, the data will load. And as you see, it took us to the same property that we clicked on in CodeMap. So you can see who's my council person? Am I in a floodplain? So things like that. And so that's another kind of tool that we added recently. And with that, I'll pause really quickly for questions. I don't have the chat pulled up. So if there are any questions in the chat.
Henry, you have a couple in the chat. You want me to read them to you, or?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up. I closed out the panel that had the chat on it. So yeah, actually, if you could read them out, Kevin, that would be awesome.
Well, I answered the first question. So we just have the one about how often the map is updated. As the person is saying on the tooltip is not always the same as the one listed in SStat in terms of if the property had recently been sold.
Sure. I will say all of the DHCD data points, so like vacant buildings, permits, other notices, things like that, that is up to date. That's updated live. It's a live connection to our inspection databases and permits database. The property ownership, that is, we rely on SStat. So, sometimes there's a delay actually from when the property is sold and when it appears in SStat and things like that. So and I think that delay has actually been getting longer over the past year or two. So that's not something I can give a specific answer about how often it's updated, but it's recent and updated regularly.
The follow-up question is, so the tooltip should match SStat?
Yes. Like the tooltip, do you mean the property pop-up?
I think, Amanda, is that what you mean? Yes.
Okay, yep.
So sorry. So I'm finding that sometimes it's not matching. Do you know why that might be?
Could you send me an example? That would be helpful, I think.
I will look for one and send that to you. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, happy to look into that. Cool. Are there any other questions before I kind of move on? All right. Cool. So yeah, so that's, you come down to the property level and you can get a sense of what's going on. Again, I want to reiterate that you can customize, the layers. So say, you're interested in seeing more, there's open work orders, there's other open notices, and you can see those appear, in more detail on the legend. And say you're working in CodeMap and you have it customized, you got all your layers on, you love the way that it's set up and you understand it, you have all the layers you need, and you accidentally close CodeMap. I'm going to refresh the map, and I'll show you a way to fix that. So say you had your layers open last time and you really liked them. You refresh CodeMap. There's this button in the bottom right that says click to restore the map extent and layer visibility where you left off. And so if you click there, it will return you to where you were in your last session, and it will also include the same layers that you had turned on. So that is like one small degree of customization that, it's not really like a customized to your user preferences, but it at least remembers. So that's, I think, really a really helpful feature that not many people know about. I'm going to go through some of the tools, and hopefully this kind of gets to more of the heart of the matter about data accessibility and sharing and things like that. So the first item is the legend. You can toggle that on or off. The second tool set is the customized tool set, and there's a handful of items here. The first is the base map gallery. So the base map is kind of like the underlying layer with, you can see the street names. This is kind of like a very basic one, but you can do Maryland imagery. I can't remember the last time this was updated, but you can get pretty good aerial imagery, although it takes a very long time to load. And then there's a handful of other ones that you can add as well. The second tool in the customized data set is add data. And that is a little bit more, I guess, technologically advanced. If you have say you have a spreadsheet with a bunch of addresses on it, and you should add, and you want to put it on a map, you can add a column that just says Baltimore all the way down, and then a column that says Maryland all the way down. So like a city and a state column, in addition to your rows of addresses. If you click add data and then click file, you can browse, and it should be saved as a CSV. And so browse for a CSV, and it will, I don't have an example pulled up, but it'll put the addresses on the map for you. We also have a draw tool where you can add custom drawings to the map. Click the plus button and then draw shapes, or you can add text and labels and things like that. That's that's helpful if there's something up, a specific property that you want to remember, and you zoom out, you'll still be able to see the drawing. The next tool is the measurement tool, so you can get measure area in a variety of units, as well as length or distance. So that's another useful tool. I think our some code enforcement inspectors use that, because in some cases, I think like the fine amount for certain violations is correlated to like the size of the property and things like that. So that's a cool tool. Now is the analyze tool, a little bit more kind of in depth on the data. So here's the select data by drawing. And so this is a way where you can, if you're interested in capturing information about a specific geographic area, you have the select tool, which is just the option to select and to draw the shape that you're interested in capturing. And then you have a layer list here, and should match up with the layer list that you see on the right. So if the layer is in black, that means it's on, and you can capture that information. So first let's draw the shapes. They were interested in these two blocks here. You click on each axis of the shape that you want to draw, and you can double click to complete. Then you'll see the count of properties that are in this layer. So for example, in this shape that we just drew, there are 8 properties under permit. And then you can click the 3 dots and export to a CSV file. So you get that in a spreadsheet, and it'll have, it'll have whether it's city owned or not. It'll have, I think, neighborhood and the address and a couple of other columns. So that's like a quick way to kind of like capture data in a very specific area. You can also download just every single property that is in that boundary that you drew, and that will match like the real property data that's on Open Baltimore. Speaking of Open Baltimore, the next tool is download data, and so there's a handful of data sets that are available on Open Baltimore, and right now we have real property, which is all the parcels in the city with a variety of information about them. Current vacant building notices, it's all housing and building permits going back to 2019, and then there's earlier permits in a different layer. It's just too large to have in one place. Vacant building rehabs, so these were buildings that were vacant and then issued a use and occupancy permit. Completed demolition, the open bid list, which is properties that are for sale, like I was showing in the Buy into Be More site. Adopt-a-lots, and as well as filed and settled receiverships. So if you click on those links, it'll take you directly to that data set in Open Baltimore. And there are a handful of additional data sets that we're hoping to add into Open Baltimore, including, we're redoing our property registration and licensing systems. We're working with a new vendor on the database for that. And so, we're usually always working to, add more data to Open Baltimore to make more things accessible in more ways, and not just on CoDeMap, but also kind of the raw data. So that's how you access that. A couple of other quick tools in the share tool set is print. So if you click print, it will generate an image or a PDF of the map extent that we're currently looking at. So this whole screen, and sometimes it takes a minute, but you can change the settings to, the size of the image, the format, and then there's also advanced settings. So if you don't want, you can add a custom title, or change the author or anything like that, and hit print. It will take a moment, and while I'm waiting for that to load, I'm just going to go over the last tool, which is share, which is a cool tool. If you're interested in sharing this exact same map extent in CoDeMap, you can copy this link and send it in an email or whatever, and someone can open it and they'll see the exact same thing that you're looking at. So it's a great way to kind of share, specific views, and you can also mess around with the options to make sure that all the layers that you want to share are turned on. And it looks like our map is ready. So I'll click on this, and as you can see, this is the exact same map extent that we're looking at. You have the legend down here at the bottom. You can see all of the layers that are turned on, as well as a scale. And that basically concludes the CoDeMap training. I know it's a lot of information all at once, so I really, encourage you to kind of, first of all, share this, with your coworkers and anybody that you know. And then also, I encourage you to kind of play around with some of the tools that are in this link at the top, as well as the tools at the bottom. So yeah, I'll open the floor again to questions.
Well, I'll jump in. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just have a quick one. As we're using it in the future, if we come up with questions, what's the best way to get in touch with someone for some support?
Sure. If it's a specific CoDeMap related question, you can reach out to me directly.
Okay. And what's the best email for you?
Sure. It's henry.waldron@baltimorecity.gov.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to answer any technical questions or anything like that.
Hey, Henry, is there an eraser tool? Like you put that little drawing in there. If I wanted to get rid of it,
Sure.
Is there a tool, or do I refresh? Okay.
So you can actually go back into the customize and the draw tool, and you'll see, I don't really, I haven't been labeling my drawings very well, but you can delete them. So
Okay,
that one at the top was the most recently drawn one.
This has been super useful. Thank you so much. I need to run to a story, but I appreciate you guys putting this together. Thanks, Henry.
Sure thing. Happy to
Agreed.
help.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, just like I was saying, please, share this far and wide. When we launched the new CoDeMap, we did a bunch of trainings. We tried to get it out to as many people as possible, but I'm always surprised when, there's still a lot of people who don't know about it or don't use it. But I think it's a really fantastic resource for, getting a sense of what's going on in your neighborhood, or, if you're researching or anything else.
Can I ask, how long does it take from the like demolished section, like the ones with the brown, for it to become like an empty lot with that indication?
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, so as you can see here, these in theory should be vacant lots. The vacant lot data is also generated by SDAT, and that's based off of the property assessment. And so it's basically if there are if the property gets assessed and there's a column that's called no improvement, and that basically means there's no structures or anything built on the property, that will be indicated in that column. And so that's what we use as our proxy for vacant lots. And then and because the vacant lot can not only just like an individual property, but also let's see, along like train tracks, for example, there's typically a lot of vacant lots and things like that are also kind of considered part of a vacant lot. So in some cases, we'll have these brown boundaries that don't have the vacant lot indicator because they haven't been reassessed since the demolition. And so, yeah, so if there's items that we're kind of working on, we'll usually pair these up together. Like, are they, if we need to know about vacant lots, we'll look at the vacant lot layer plus the recently demolished buildings.
Gotcha, thank you.
Sure.
Also, I found an example of one of those mismatch owners. Do you want me to give you that address now?
Sure. Actually, if you don't mind just sending it to me, or putting it in the chat, and I can reach back out to you. Actually, if you email me, then I'll have your contact.
Yeah, I will email that to you. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, this concludes our CoDeMap media training. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Again, this was recorded, so you can reach out to me if you need it, and I'll be able to send you the link. Thank you, Henry, for doing the training for everyone, and everyone have a nice day, and thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, everyone.